All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green. We can't waste any time today because our guest, Ron Keel, he's always on the move. He's always got something new happening. He's always cutting edge. By the time this interview is over, he'll have 5 or 6 new projects. So we don't want to waste any time. And listen, he fought for your right to rock. The least you could do is listen to what he has to say right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. All right, it's been too long for me seeing Ron Keel. I'm ready to catch up. Here he is, Ron Keel.
Hello, Jason. And time with Jason Green is never wasted. God, man, it's great to see you on the screen and great to talk to you and your audience today. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, Ron. We're going to talk a little bit about how you and I met because I think it's interesting before we get into your career. I told you as soon as I saw you, it's so great to see somebody who's got good technology. You know, you've been doing radio for quite some time. You do video as well. And you know that sometimes you get a guy who comes on in like a ham radio. It's rough.
Well, the internet is the modern way for us all to stay connected and communicate with our fans and with each other. And it is a big learning curve for a redneck metal cowboy like me trying to figure out the cutting edge of technology, but I try and stay on top of it and deliver the best product I can. I've been working online, Jason, as you know, for seriously since 2017 when my wife Renee was diagnosed with cancer. And all of a sudden we got that diagnosis, and that's a life changer, as anybody knows who's been through cancer or had a family member or friend that's gone through that diagnosis. All of a sudden, I'm not going anywhere, man. I'm going to have to work from home. And this is way before COVID, way before 2020. I was forced to work from home. How do I do that in a way that can still satisfy my urge to entertain people and satisfy the fans' need for entertainment? So I dug in deep, got online with a platform called Patreon, and tried to up my game with the broadcast gear. And my location here, as you see, this is the fan cave. This is my performance area here at the house where I've got a PA system just outside the camera view here. All this stuff on the walls, all this stuff is all gifts from fans. None of this is personal trophies or memorabilia. These are all things that fans have given me or just gifts from through the years. So I'm surrounded by the love of my fans. And this is my rehearsal performance area and an opportunity for me to turn the cameras on and connect with you and your audience. So I appreciate this.
How cool. Yeah. And, I want to say real quick about your Patreon. I'm sort of new to this whole world of it. You have a really good platform. You're not gouging people. Your prices are really affordable and you're interacting with them and you're giving good contact. This is not a cash grab. This is not a hold out the tip jar. You really are giving people what they would want.
Well, it is, Jason. And the fact is, if I did a Facebook live stream performance and put out a virtual tip jar, I'd probably have 1,000 people or more putting 10 or 20 bucks into that virtual tip jar, which ends up being, you do the math. Math is not my best subject, but I think that's a lot of cash. However, for $6.99, you can get all access to my Patreon and see, hear, and experience stuff that nobody else gets. It's really become not even about me anymore. It's about the fans and the tribe and the interaction and the community that we've built on Patreon at patreon.com/Ron Keel. And I have some visual aids that I will incorporate throughout the interview. Of course, you can find all these links at ronkeel.com. That's your one-stop shop for everything that I do. The Patreon platform has been fantastic. It gave me an opportunity because, first of all, Jason, I got to entertain people. It's what I do. It's what I've always done. And that audience that you can reach online is incredible. People from all over the world, from people I've never met, are coming into my living room and into my fan cave here to see live performances, voice lessons, guitar instruction, songwriting workshops. Those have gone over really big, where I take the audience through my process of writing songs so they can hear me come up with the original riff and then go through the entire process as we put lyrics to it and put drums to it, and just kind of taking them on my journey with me. And they're all riding shotgun at patreon.com/Ron Keel. So I really embraced that when I had to work from home for a year, long before COVID. As I mentioned, Renee had cancer, 9, 10, 12 surgeries. I lost count. And I had to find a way to do what I love and connect with my audience and engage them. So in 2017, long before COVID, we had a cabinet full of masks. I was wiping down every doorknob, every remote control. The house was completely sanitized, because when you're going through cancer and chemo and radiation, your immune system is severely compromised. And that really prepared us in a big way, both physically, mentally, and technologically and musically, for what happened in 2020. So I was ready for it. And as soon as I figured out we're not going to go too far this year, I put the pedal down on Patreon and ended up increasing my sales. 2020 was my best year of my entire career in terms of money generated. And I hate to brag about it. It's not an ego thing. It's not I'm some genius or some rocket scientist. It was all because Renee's cancer, and I had to find a way to do this online. So the merch sales, I released 4 albums last year, 5 music videos, and we've got some of the albums from last year to showcase. This one here, South by South Dakota, from the Ron Keel Band. We released that a year ago in April of 2020, and also the Steeler Come Hell or Hollywood album, which came out last year, and we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Steeler.
We're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to get into that.
The Emerald Sabbath album, which was my Black Sabbath tribute, which is really cool.
Nice, yeah, you're prepared.
And the Alone at Last acoustic album, and all that. So yeah, working from home has been great. I do love the live performance aspect of being on the road and hanging with my guys and sweating on stage with the people in the front row. But I'm able to do that here, right here where you see me. The microphone is never far away. Mm-hmm. I have always got this thing ready to go. It's turned on. It's ready to rock. I'm going to do a concert this afternoon when we get done with this interview, because I can pretend. I can turn the PA on, turn the lights on, turn the mic on, do my show. And it feels to me, I don't get that audience reaction, that thunder coming back from the crowd, but I'm able to do my gig. The audience can't do that. They have to go to a concert to experience that thrill, that electricity and interaction with their fellow concert goers and with the artist on stage. So I understand the audience's hunger to get back out there and experience some live shows in 2021. And we've got a lot of those on the books.
Yeah, and we're going to get into your schedule. First, I want to just make sure your wife is doing better now, though, right?
She's doing great, man. She is over 3 years cancer-free now. She wrote a book. Of course, we have the visual aids. Of course, the Sleaze Rock headline later on today is going to say, Ron Keel has AIDS, right? Ron Keel announces on Jason Green's show that he has AIDS. No, I have visual AIDS. So I've got all the CDs and the books and stuff around here. But Renee ended up writing a fantastic book about her journey through cancer, and she is doing great. Thank you for asking, and thanks to all the fans that have supported us through that tough time. It was a battle, and I'm really happy that her story and our story had a happy ending.
Yeah, and because you guys definitely had a very public journey and people were following it with you. So it's great to see that ending. Ron, I want to talk about how we first met each other. I'm not sure you're even going to remember this.
I don't. Spring it on me. Go ahead.
So I'd say it was probably 2007, 2008 here in Las Vegas. And I think people at home who aren't from Vegas don't realize Vegas is like a small town. You run into the same people over and over, and it's the smallest big city in a lot of ways. So yeah. I'm at the Luxor Hotel. I'm out with a young lady. We're walking through the Luxor, and I see a little stage, and I see 2 musicians performing acoustic, a duo, and a little small lounge. And I told my friend, I go, I think that's Ron Keel. And she was probably had no idea. Little young. I try to date.
She was a young lady, then she had no idea who Ron Keel was.
So, but listen, she became a fan that day. So I go, I'm going to request the right to rock, So I come up to the stage and I put down my request, and it was funny. And so you picked up the request, and it was not the place to play the right to rock. And I think the person you were playing with probably didn't know it, but you ended up playing Because the Night, which was on your later album by Keel. And so it was really funny. And then that night I went home, and at that point I was already working on Sin City Sinners, a band that I created and managed for the last, I think, 14 years.
Yeah.
And I said, we got to get Ron to come in and jam. That was at the beginning of that concept that we're going to have these guests sit in every show. And we did this big show. We had all kinds of guests, and we had you come in and play 4 or 5 of your songs. And it became and you're such a great guy, and it became so much fun. The fans really loved seeing you, that you and I started to do that on a fairly regular basis, that you would come in and sing with the Sinners.
It was absolutely a dream come true to hook up with you and the Sinners and be able to get on stage and play those songs with a full band live in places like the Dive Bar. We do have a new remastered version of Dive Bar Days Revisited. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to bootleg your shit. No, but this is cool. This is the Dive Bar. This is the place you're talking about, man, where I did my first gig with Sin City Sinners in, 2007, I think it was. Some great memories and some big gigs with amazing players like Todd Kearns, Brett Muscat, and the list goes on. Paul Shortino was not the guy I was doing the duo with at the Luxor. To rewind your story, I was doing a duo acoustic gig at the Luxor. Was it not Paul Shortino?
No, because I knew Paul. It was someone I didn't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it a chick?
No.
All right, never mind then.
It wasn't Paul. That wasn't a chick.
It was a young lady.
But at that point, though, we started working together, and I'm going to bring up a funny story, Ron. The Sin City Sinners got a residency at the Palazzo Hotel. This was a very conservative place, and there was no drinking and no smoking, and there was no talking to the audience, and there was no cussing. There was no fun. And
there was a long list of rules for that gig. I remember you sent me the list of rules, and I'm going, shit, can I do this? But we managed to do it without drinking, smoking, or flirting with the waitresses.
I would take you out in between sets where you would sneak a smoke, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
But our singer lost his voice, and I needed somebody. I said, Ron, do you think you could come in and do 8 hours of music? It was nuts how much we had to do. And Jimmy Crespo, formerly of Aerosmith, was playing lead guitar at the time. He's an incredible guitar player. And so it was him, and we had Brent, and I'm not sure who else was even in the band at that point.
Zach was there.
Zach Frone, who's another really talented guy.
Yep.
And you came in and sort of had to just wing it. And we played what we could in this really upscale lounge where you had to wear, collared shirt and a long sleeve.
A very low volume electronic drum kit. But those are part of the challenges of doing that Vegas scene. I mean, the Sinners and myself, we all went through that. There was times at Vamped when it was absolutely just like Hollywood in the 80s. And then there's times at the Palazzo where it wasn't quite like Hollywood in the 80s.
Yes, the money was great. But I remember
the money was good.
We had this talk that was, do we do this for the rest of our lives? Look at that. Is that a Ron Keel flask?
It's Keel Hall, baby. Keel Hall.
Nice. Ron, you missed your calling. You either should have been in professional wrestling or a used car salesman. And radio is definitely perfect for you. There's no question that you could have been, Rock and Ron Keel coming at you in the morning. There you
go. Radio is great. I love the radio gig. I've enjoyed that now for 9 years. And I've had the best of both worlds with my syndicated show, Streets of Rock and Roll, which you can hear at ronkeel.com. And on live radio, I was the #1 voice in this market, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the wild, wild Midwest where I call home now. The #1 rock voice in the market for 3 Nielsen ratings periods. Really had the audience by the short hairs, and still to this day, a great following in this region built from my live radio experience. I enjoyed that, going on the air live for 4 hours a day, taking phone calls, Facebook messages, and you're really interacting. That station, that format was built to interact with the audience on a real-time basis. And I miss that, but it's just too much in the middle of the day to take 4 hours out of your day to spin music and hang with your friends and party online. With my schedule, touring, writing songs, doing sessions, all the other projects that I have doing, that I'm doing, the syndicated format works great for me. When I'm on the road, I can literally do the show from my iPad in the RV, or I can send in a best of episode like we're doing this week as I get ready to gear up for a solid month on the road here starting next week. So I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But I love the radio gig. I feel like it fulfills a part of me creatively that it's kind of like making an album every week. The 1 hour Streets of Rock and Roll syndicated show is very much like assembling an album with the right songs and the right transitions and the right, the interviews are obviously the meat of the sandwich, as you know, because you do a ton of great interviews with all of our peers and some great rock stars. I love doing those interviews. We've had some Hall of Famers on the show and some guys this week on the show that should be Hall of Famers. Mark Varner from Grand Funk Railroad and Don McLean, who wrote American Pie, on my show, on the Best Of edition that we're airing this week. Some highlights from those interviews. Two should be Hall of Famers. So I love the radio gig. And, of course, you can find all those stations and links at RonKeel.com.
Ron Keel's become Carrot Top now. Now you got prop humor.
I got more. There's more. That, of course, tequila hall. This is not a prop. It's just water, man. Really, it's just water. I don't drink when I do interviews, but this was a gift from a good friend, and I just thought, how cool is that? Tequila hall. Here's to you, baby.
Very cool. Yeah. So, okay. So, Ron, people want to hear about the old days. We want to hear about Steeler. We want to hear about where Keel began. So we're going to go back. Nashville, the band Steeler, you put it together as a young man. You maybe 17, 18?
Steeler was formed in Nashville in the winter of 1980, as the 80s were just about to begin, and I was 19 years old. I know everybody loves the old days. I mean, I'm the same way. I like the Wild West or the Renaissance or whatever. But really, looking back on those times, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't the best of times. It was an amazing experience, but I was still immature, did not know a fraction of what I know now. I was learning how to write songs. I was broke. I was in an abusive marriage. I was living off literally a quarter of a peanut butter sandwich every 2 days. So people think, oh, those were the good old days. My ass, man. Today is the good old days, and today is the best day of my life until tomorrow. But we were able to create something with Steeler in Nashville in 1980, 81, when we did our first gig in February of 1981. And we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of that now with Steeler, Come Hell or Hollywood, this great new release on F&A Records. And had so many dreams come true, but it was a really tough time, man. We paid our dues. That's part of the process when you're 20, 21 years old and you're just trying to carve your own niche in the business and learning how to sing, how to perform, how to write songs, how to run a band, how to lead. And I've learned a lot along the way. And that experience was certainly something that I treasure, but something that I wouldn't want to relive. That's for sure.
Sure. Yeah. So how do you make the decision, the brave decision, to go to Hollywood?
Well, you could see the new wave of British heavy metal happening with bands like Def Leppard, Maiden, Priest. All this there was a huge European, UK, the new wave of British heavy metal, as it was called, with Motorhead and all those other bands that I mentioned. And you started to hear some good, solid, heavy rock on American radio. Not metal, but bands like Triumph, for instance, certainly showed us that you could have really good, hooky, commercial rock songs that were powerful and heavy. And it just felt to me like something's happening here. And Steeler was literally built from 4 guys, the only 4 guys in Nashville in 1980 that wanted to put on a show. There was 4 guys, me, Michael Dunnigan, Robert Eva, and Hart Palmer, our original bass player. We wanted to put on a show. we wanted to dress up in the animal skins and the spandex, and we wanted flash pots and backdrops and light show and choreographed moves like Judas Priest. We were the only guys in Tennessee that wanted to do that. So we did, and we got a lot of attention very quickly. We were like an apple tree in a cornfield. Obviously, we did not fit in Nashville. And where are we going to go? We got to go somewhere, because Nashville's not going to give us the recognition that we want. We're not going to get a record deal or get signed or make it out of Nashville. It was way too country centric at the time in 1980, 81. And I go, well, we got to go to New York or LA. And LA has got hot girls on the beach and the sunshine, and so let's go west. And so we just got in the van, loaded up the truck. Me and the guys in the band and crew went west to Los Angeles, Hollywood, in October of 1981. And looking back on it now, it took balls of steel to make that move. I thought I was on some destined path where there's no denying me. I'm going to make it. I'm going to find a way. I'd never doubted myself or my destiny, but getting there and realizing that the extent of that uphill climb, when we were competing with the bands from that region, Rat, Motley Crue, Great White, which was Dante Fox at the time, Dubrow, which was Kevin Dubrow in between his versions of Quiet Riot, so many other great bands on the scene that were out there slugging it out, and they would get the first preferential treatment for bookings. We're the country guys from Nashville, these redneck boys from Nashville, trying to get a gig at the Whiskey or the Troubadour, playing the Troubadour on a Monday night at midnight for $1 a ticket. And if you sell 100 tickets, you get $100. But we paid our dues and managed to set ourselves apart from the pack, and had a lot of good breaks along the way. That Metal Massacre record was a big break for us.
Yeah,
with Brian Slagle and Metal Blade. That was a big break for us. All of a sudden, we're on the same album with Rat and Metallica, and we're getting played on the radio, and it was a huge break for us.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how early in the scene you were there. I mean, Rat had Tell the World. Metallica had Hit the Lights. Metallica was even spelled differently with 2 T's.
That's right.
Different band, completely different. Ron McGovney, different thing. And it's amazing that you were really there on the ground floor. You know, I've heard you say before that all these bands had these shredding guitar players. You know, Jake E. Lee and George Lynch were out there, and I think that you were thinking, we got to have one of these guys if we're going to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. I was seeing guys like you mentioned, George Lynch, Jake E. Lee, Warren DeMartini, and the list goes on. And amazing musicians came out of that Hollywood scene. Tommy Lee, all the guys in Crew. I mean, I think certainly some of those, Mick Mars, God bless him and happy birthday, Mick, certainly one of the most underrated guitarists in our era, in our genre. So you had to have somebody like that. And I'll put Mick right up there with Jakey and George, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of what he did for those songs. So yeah, you had to have that guy. And my lack of leadership skills, and I'll put that blame squarely on me. I'll take the rap. The fact that I did replace Steelers' original guitar player, who's my brother then and still my brother now, Michael Dunnigan. I think if I had known how to motivate and lead better, I wouldn't have had to make that move. But no, I took the easy way out and just hired the best guitar player on the planet to replace him. So Yngwie Malmsteen joined the band, and the rest is history.
How did you know, Ron? How did you meet Mike Varney first? Mike Varney from Shrapnel Records, who I keep talking to about coming on the show, and he's always considering it. But his name comes up in so many of these interviews. So how did you first meet Mike?
Mike Varney was the guy in 1981 when you wanted to get your guitar player or your band noticed. He wrote a column for Guitar Player magazine, and everybody sent him a demo. Here, check me out. And he was doing these compilation albums called US Metal. And I do not have that visual aid handy. I should have thought you were going to ask this question because I've got a copy of U.S. Metal in the other room. We were on U.S. Metal Volume 4, but I sent Mike a copy of the Steelers single, Cold Day in Hell, which was released February 17th, 1981. And the reviews on this single, this 45 single that we released, were absolutely Sounds Magazine, Jeff Barton, a huge journalist in the UK, gave us a 5-star review and a big write-up. All of a sudden, we're in Kerrang! Magazine. We're getting a lot of international press and media, and also getting played on the radio in Los Angeles on KLOS and KMET. So we had some traction at the time, no doubt about it. Plus, we're one of the top drawing acts in Hollywood in 1982. That whole year, 81, 82, Steeler really climbed the ladder and had bands like Metallica and Rat opening for us at a lot of these gigs. So we were on the radar. I sent the single to Varney, and he said, "Man, I'll sign you. I'll give you a record deal, but I can't work with this guitar player." And so that was a really tough call, knowing that I had a record deal with Mike Varney in one hand, and then I had my brother and best friend literally on the other hand. And I wanted to succeed more than anything. I mean, I was driven to make it, and it was a very tough decision, and maybe not even the right decision to fire Michael Dunnigan or just to part ways with Michael. At the time, I probably should have shit-canned the Steeler name at the time and called it Keel. That probably, looking back now, of course, hindsight's always 20/20. I should have just ended Steeler, called it Keel. And then Yngwie Malmsteen would have been the lead guitar player in Keel. How stupid would that have been? But I fired or parted ways with Michael and decided to keep the band going with a new guitarist. We heard Yngwie. I met Mike Varney at his house on New Year's Day, 1983. It was January 1st. I'd spent New Year's Eve in San Francisco and took the drive north to Northern California, where I think it was probably 100 miles or so to where Mike lived, and went to his apartment at the time. He had an apartment, and all the walls of the apartment were covered with cassette tapes from every guitar player on the planet that had sent him their demo, looking for a break. And Mike and I sat there, one cassette tape after the other, listened to them all, and they all had the noodles, and they had the fingers and the hands, and they were all trying to show something, but they didn't have anything to say. We put Yngwie's demo on cassette into the boombox, and it was immediately obvious that this guy is a cut above. He's obviously got something very special, and we called him right then and there from Northern California on Mike's phone. We called Yngwie in Stockholm, Sweden, and began the discussions about bringing him to America to join Steeler.
Now, Ron, I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask you or heard you talk about it. So what was on the cassette? What were they, songs, or was it just him shredding? What was on that tape?
Good question. It was the Rising Force demos. I'm pretty sure those demos have surfaced or have been bootlegged or whatever, but it was his original teenage Rising Force demos. I don't remember the vocals. If there were vocals, I don't remember them. I just remember that guitar playing and going, this guy has the potential to reinvent the instrument like Randy Rhoads did, or Edward Van Halen did, or Eric Clapton, or Jimi Hendrix, or Jimmy Page. This guy is next in line, and I wanted the best. So we got him to America to cut the Steeler record, and a lot of long stories in between, which you can find in my book, Even Keel, Life on the Streets of Rock and Roll. The Kindle version is available at I'm just kidding. It's at Barnes and Noble. We're redoing the book, by the way, republishing a new version of the book next year. But I'm going to expand on the Yngwie story in the next version of the book. I didn't say too much last time around because I wanted to take the high road. But there's a lot of stuff like you're asking the fans want to know. I'm very thankful for the opportunity and for that record that you're showing right here on the screen, which was a cornerstone of 80s metal. That was one of the records that set the bar for everybody else that followed. It was released in 1983, literally hot on the heels of Quiet Riot's Metal Health and Motley Crue's Too Fast for Love. So we were right there in the mix at the beginning, and that record got it all started for me.
You know, I interviewed Mark Bowles not too long ago. He didn't have very many nice things to say about Yngwie. He sounded like he was a difficult guy, but of course he was dealing with Yngwie when he was already famous. So was he already difficult as a kid?
No, he wasn't. It was difficult for us to relate. We were not on the same frequency, Jason, kind of like a wireless transmitter and receiver. Yngwie and I, we didn't butt heads, but we weren't on the same frequency. And we didn't write together. We couldn't come up with songs. I was of the American metal school. I mean, and Yngwie was the classical thing. It was blues versus the classics, and both are cool. We just weren't. We didn't have the same goals in mind when it came to writing a song or doing a show or any of that stuff. And he was not difficult for me. And when he quit, he left my band to join a signed act with one of his all-time favorite singers, Graham Bonnet, Alcatraz. And it wouldn't have mattered if Yngwie and I were best friends and we had written up 20 great songs together. It wouldn't have mattered. He would have left, and I would have blessed him for leaving at that point. That's a dream come true. Just like when I did the Black Sabbath gig, the guys in Keel understood. So it's Black Sabbath, man. You got to do it. Yngwie was joining a signed act with a record deal with Graham Bonnet, who had sung with Yngwie's idol, Ritchie Blackmore. So that was a no-brainer. And when we parted ways, we parted as on good terms. Unfortunately, those good terms have eroded through the years. I would love to talk to him again and reminisce or rehash or just even do a song together for charity or something. I admire the guy's drive and his talent, his determination, and his vision. And we never did. You're looking for dirt, you're not going to find it here. We just didn't get along. We didn't resonate together. We're two different fruits on two different trees, and we could not cross-pollinate, so to speak.
Yeah, well, and very young and different things. Some people would argue that Yngwie still hasn't found the proper songs, if you know what I mean. So Yngwie always says he wants to be known for what he does, and that's why he's going to continue to make his style of music and his style of playing. And I think that obviously works for him.
Absolutely. I get that. That's the freedom of self-expression. That is the right to rock. You have the right to rock and express yourself however you want to express yourself. And just like Yngwie is doing it with his guitar and his music and his art, I'm doing it with mine.
He's a singer now too, don't forget.
So I've heard.
Yeah.
I haven't heard. No, I'm not listening, but I've heard.
Yeah.
I've heard.
I think he just figured I might as well just do it all myself. If I can't get along with other people, if he could play the cymbals like the monkey between his knees, I think he would do it.
Hey, I do that at my solo acoustic gigs, man. It's a very self-indulgent thing, and you've seen my solo acoustic gig in Vegas. It's a huge challenge to do that. I eventually, actually, on my next album, which I can't announce yet, but next time I'm on your broadcast or podcast, I will announce my new album project. But I'm going to do a couple of tracks where I play all the instruments myself, not the whole album, sure, but at least a couple of tracks to really satisfy that self-indulgent side of me, to play drums, bass, guitar, do all the vocals, and just kind of just to say I did that. I always loved that about Paul McCartney's first album. Mm-hmm. When McCartney released that McCartney record, I was just a kid, and I thought, he played all the instruments on this. He played the drums and the bass and the guitar and the piano, and he sang. And I just always wanted to do that. It's on my bucket list as well, but I'm not going to play anywhere near as fast as Yngwie. I'm just going to do the real simple melodic guitar solo that Ron Keel is not quite so famous.
You're a great guitar player. I don't know if everybody's familiar that obviously you play guitar as well. So you maybe should have laid off the keytar, Ron. Maybe that. I was trying to figure out what might have hurt Keel, and maybe it was the keytar.
No. That was a huge single for us, and the song was very well received. And I just thought, I just want to be mobile. I'll do anything to move around. I do not want to be stationary behind a mic or a keyboard. As you've seen my show, Jason, on hundreds of times. I've got the headset mic on, and I am mobile. I've got a wireless unit. I am all over the place. I am not going to be chained to a keyboard. Being mobile is a big part of my show and has been since the mid 80s. When I saw Sammy Hagar come out with Van Halen and he was using a headset mic, I go, I got to have one of those. So I love the mobility of being able to use the keytar. It's not actually, it's called a remote keyboard. It's not a keytar, it's a remote keyboard. And I think it was way more effective. Look at the Tears of Fire video, man. It doesn't lie. It's a great showpiece. And I just sold the keytar for charity.
Called the remote keyboard, Ron, please.
The remote keyboard. We sold that to a hardcore Keelaholic in Canada. Alan Cook bought the keytar for over $2,000, which went to, I forget which charity cause. I do a lot of charity auctions and try and raise money for people in need. But the keytar now has the remote keyboard has a new home in Canada at Alan Cook's house because he was the highest bidder on that charity auction. And we put $2,000 towards, I believe it was our veterans charities for that particular auction.
Yeah, you've always been very generous with your time. You and I have done so many charity things together. We'd get up at 7 in the morning to do these walks for great causes. Anytime I had an event, I always knew I could call you and you'd come and lend your time. So, anyway, I'm glad that the remote keyboard has a new home and with someone who loves it, and it's very cool. Let's talk about, so Yngwie leaves Steeler to join Alcatraz. Is there any thought of keeping Steeler together, or at that point it's time to do your own Keel?
No, Steeler continued on, and still to this day continues on. Mitch Perry replaced Yngwie. We did not lose a step. We had a gig the next week. Mitch came in and just nailed it. And Mitch and I are still really good friends and did the Keel Fest Steeler reunion May 10th, 2019, just 2 years ago. We were in Columbus, Ohio. Rick Fox, Mitch Perry, Rod Keel, and Dwayne Miller from Keel on drums doing the Steeler reunion. And Mitch did a great job with picking up where Yngwie left off. And we still have some new music left to record. There will be a new Steeler track in 2022 featuring Mitch Perry, Ron Keel, Rick Fox, and Dwayne Miller.
How cool, yeah. And for those who don't know, Mitch Perry was in the band Talus with Billy Sheehan, MSG later with Michael Schenker. He's done it all. He's in Lita Ford's band now. So
no, it's been a while since he was in Lita Ford's band. He's got his own project now, MPG, Mitch Perry Group. He played with Edgar Winter, played with Cher. So yeah, he's a big time cat and still just an amazing player and a good friend. So we were really excited to get Steeler back together for that one-off at Keel Fest, and hopefully we'll do that again.
So what makes Steeler come to an end? Well, hold on, I'll let you pause to drink from the
it was just business. It was just a business decision, Jason. Steeler was my band. I fought for that brand and that name. It meant a lot to me, but it was pretty obvious that as other bands started to get signed in 1983, 84, it was obvious that I was not going to be able to achieve my goals under a band concept because the impression was that it was unstable because Yngwie quit and this guy came in, Mitch came in, and this bass player and this drummer, and it was unstable. The only way to maintain that stability was to create something that was really built around my name, Keel, my songs, my voice, my vision of what my dream band should be. So it was a business decision to pull the plug on Steeler, call it Keel. And it was obviously the right move because within 9 months of making that choice, we were in the studio with Gene Simmons, signed to a major label deal, recording our second album, The Right to Rock, which Lay Down the Law, Right to Rock were recorded literally within a couple of months of each other. And within by January of 85, Right to Rock was on the charts and we were on tour all over the world. So it was obviously the right business decision for me to pull the plug on Steeler and form a band called Keel.
Yeah, and you were really cranking these things out. I mean, man, the 80s were busy for you. You were not sitting back. We're taking a look at the very politically correct album cover for Lay Down the Law right here, which, you know, if you look at the original Slippery When Wet Bon Jovi cover, they were probably copying your thing. It was similar gimmick at that time. Of course, they changed it. So you help me with the timeline. Black Sabbath comes before this record comes out or after?
Before. Black Sabbath came when I was just putting Keel together. We were doing the final Steeler demos and the first Keel demos kind of overlapping at, where was it? Pasha Studios in North Hollywood, I believe, where Spencer Proffer had produced the Quiet Riot Mental Health mega, 18 million or whatever that record sold. And Spencer Proffer had signed on to produce the new Black Sabbath album following Ian Gillan's departure. This is in March of '84. And he had heard my voice on the demos and pegged me for that gig. Basically started negotiations with Sabbath. Spencer was very, how do I say it, power hungry, or I don't know. He was riding high off that Mental Health album. He was the first metal band to ever hit #1 on the Billboard chart. Quiet Riot really broke open the floodgates for all of us in 1983. And Spencer had a lot of power at the time, and his power basically got me the gig in Sabbath. But Tony Iommi is not going to just bend over for Spencer Proffer. And I got caught in the crossfire when Spencer started to try and make them into an 80s hair band and make them record outside material. Sabbath was Sabbath and always will be, always has been.
He turned it into a Slade cover band if he had a choice.
Exactly. And Tony wasn't having any of that. And Spencer got the boot, and I got caught in the crossfire.
Tell me about these demos that are allegedly out there of Black Sabbath with you.
Well, there's some screaming vocals on there. They're on my Patreon site. They're not public, but you can subscribe to my Patreon and hear the original Black Sabbath demos. Some of them were, I think it was Spencer's stable of session musicians playing on the tracks. Dana Strum produced my vocal tracks, and they had Jakey Lee come in to my session because Jakey had been a hired gun with Ozzy, and he was very supportive of trying to coach me into, Ron, this is what it's going to be like. You're a hired gun. This is Black Sabbath. You're going to be a hired gun. And Jakey was there for my session to kind of coach me through that process and that transition from being Ron Keel to being the new singer in Sabbath. So it was an amazing experience. Some great vocals on that demo because we were trying to show off. Let's put it that we're trying to show Tony and Geezer what Ron Keel could do. So, I mean, there's some stupid, high, long, insane screams on this demo. And it got me the gig. Tony in his book says differently, which is cool. I mean, there was a lot of drugs going on at the time, frankly. And I know everybody's got their own version of history, but I did get to spend some time with Tony and Geezer and met their manager, Don Arden, had a signed contract on the wall. And Tony was dating Lita at the time. And they came to that first Keel gig, April 7th, 1984. And at the time, it was a done deal. That's why David Hemsgerling, David Michael Phillips, left my band to join King Cobra because we're done. It was our first and last gig. And then the deal fell apart. And okay, let's just keep Keel going. And for, 14 years, I didn't mention it in an interview. I didn't talk about it. Of course, we didn't have the internet back then.
Right.
But these little mentions of Ron Keel and Sabbath started coming up. And I started getting asked about it in interviews. I never used it as a notch in my barrel, so to speak. I used to sing in Black Sabbath because I never did a tour or an album with them. But the questions don't stop. Obviously, this is the latest interview that I've done here with my friend Jason Green, and the Black Sabbath questions are never going to stop. People are going to ask about it. They're going to want to know about it. And it did lead me to this Emerald Sabbath project, which is awesome cool. I got to sing 3 of the songs that were on Tony's set list. And by the way, this is the set list. This is the set list for Keel Sabbath, the Ron Keel Black Sabbath tribute, which is premiering May 29th, just in a couple of weeks at the Smokin' Country Saloon Bike Rally in Bloomville, Ohio. We are doing the Keel Sabbath set. Obviously, you can see we're opening with Neon Nights, of course.
And Ron, you should point out that this was based on the set that that Black Sabbath gave you. This is what they wanted to tour on.
It is based on the set list that Black Sabbath gave me. Of course, it's a little shorter because Black Sabbath was a headliner, and we're actually opening for Drowning Pool at this gig. So we have not. We've got an hour solid. There's only one song on the list that was not on that original set list that Tony gave me. It's Changes, the piano ballad. But I was able to do this Black Sabbath tribute record. I'm really, really proud of this. You can find the video for Die Young on YouTube. Just search YouTube for Ron Keel, Die Young, Black Sabbath, whatever. And I'm really proud of that. I got to sing an Ozzy song, Hole in the Sky, which is on the set list. I got to sing an Ian Gillan song, Trashed, which is epic. And I got to sing a Ronnie James Dio song, Die Young. So I got to cover all three iconic Black Sabbath vocalists on this record and playing with the guys who did it. I mean, Vinny Appice plays drums on Die Young. The same guy who cut the original track on Heaven and Hell plays on my track. So that's a huge treat. And I finally got to cross a Black Sabbath album off my bucket list, Emerald Sabbath. And there's going to be a sequel, Emerald Sabbath Volume 2 or whatever they're going to call it. And Vinny and Rudy Sarzo and some other guys we're all going to get back together and record some more Sabbath tributes for the next Emerald Sabbath album. In the meantime, I'm doing the Black Sabbath tribute show, really just a side project, just for fun, just because it's just going to be a blast. And the fact is, we're out there on the road this summer, and we can do an event like the Smokin' Country Saloon Bike Rally on May 28th as Ron Keel Band, headlining opening night with Every Mother's Nightmare, Jasmine Cain, Native Sons on the bill with us that night. So Ron Keel Band is headlining opening night. But we don't want to just go home. Let's just stay an extra day. And on Saturday, we'll do the Black Sabbath tribute. And I get to take the cowboy hat off, take the headset mic off. I don't have to play guitar on the Sabbath set. I just got to hit some of the high notes that Ronnie James Dio did. And I think I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very cool that, even though the Sabbath started as a small part of your career, it's turned out to be a kind of fun thing that you get to do. And you get to play this timeless music that people love. And you know what? Maybe people get to imagine what it would have been like had you toured with those guys and made a record, hearing you sing those songs. And again, the Die Young video is a great video that people could check out and get a little bit of an idea of what that might have been like. But we got to get to The Right to Rock, because this is where it really starts to happen for Keel. So Gene Simmons produces this album. He also produces your next album. I'm fascinated to know what Gene Simmons is like as a producer, especially at this time.
Gene was fantastic, man. And, I was really fortunate to be able to see behind the makeup and the money and the media blitz and hype and all that, to get to know the real guy, the guy who fell in love with rock and roll when he was just a kid, grew up, wanting to be a rock star and singing and playing and writing songs. His love and appreciation of rock and roll and rock and roll history was what really impressed me about him. And the fact that he was learning on the job as well when he produced that Right to Rock album that you're showing here. He taught me so much about being prepared and also being loose. The two, it's a dichotomy of mindsets when you enter the studio. Got to be very prepared, rehearsed, every kick pattern, every bass note, everything's got to be orchestrated properly together, but also don't be afraid to experiment or try something different. And we did that a lot on those two records that Gene produced. We would go in with a very solid blueprint and a game plan, and then we'd change some stuff on the spot just because Gene felt like, yeah, let's just try this. And he taught me that's a very important lesson, how the bass, guitar, and the kick drum work together in these kick and bass patterns, how to structure these big, huge anthem chorus harmonies, how to stack big rhythm guitars with different voicings, and the importance of attitude and emotion in the studio. It doesn't matter so much. And back then it didn't matter. Today, I think that's one thing that we're missing, is the fact that we'll auto tune everything, and we'll fix it. We'll take everything on the grid and in your Pro Tools platform, and you'll make sure that everything's in perfect time and in perfect tune. And back then it wasn't like that, man. We were looking for attitude. We're looking for emotion, energy, electricity. And Gene taught me to really focus on that. And I still do. I still do. I love the slight imperfections in my recent albums, and the fact that I still don't use auto tune. You listen back to the vocal track and you're tempted to, that's a little flat, it's a little sharp. Maybe we should fix that. And you go, no, let's just leave it the way it is, man. It's real, it's human, it's natural. Gene taught me about all that stuff. And every session I do, he is the little demon on my shoulder, still telling me, Ron, you should do this, or Ron, you should do that. So I appreciate his guidance and his mentorship during my formative years.
Yeah, and he obviously saw something in you guys. And, he comes back to do the second Keel record with you, the third Keel record, but his second with you, which is actually sometimes pretty rare, other than maybe, bands like Def Leppard who stay with the same producer at that time. And Gene's a busy guy. He had other things, but he decides to come back a year later and produce The Final Frontier with you, 1986. So what's the thoughts going into this record? Right to Rock was playing. There's a video. So tell me what happens next.
Well, what happens next is that I want Gene to produce the next Keel track for 2022. I know you want to go back in time and relive the 80s and all that, but I'm focused on the future, Jason. I'm talking about Gene Simmons coming back to produce the final Keel rock anthem from my new album, which we'll talk about next time we speak. But I digress. I progress, because I would love to work with them one more time. And the fact that it was a no-brainer that Gene would produce the next album, and even going into the third album, the 1987 self-titled album with Somebody's Waiting, United Nations, we had talked about it, and there were some disagreements in the approach and the concept for that third album, which was a make or break for us. And Gene decided to back down, and we got Michael Wagner to produce that 87 record. But Final Frontier is, to me, and a lot of fans as well, it's their favorite Keel record. It's not my favorite Keel record. My favorite Keel record is Streets of Rock and Roll. We have the new vinyl edition, which we want to plug, which you can find online at rodkeel.com. The new Streets of Rock and Roll vinyl. How cool is this? But the Final Frontier was my personal statement. And the first time I established my diversity, which has been a characteristic of my career ever since 86, when I was able to do Final Frontier, because we had a classical piece, we had pop rock, we had metal, we had straight ahead rock and roll. There was a huge array of diverse material. Gene trusted me and my vision at that point to make the record that I wanted to make, to establish my identity in my career. And some people still love the commercial songs off that record. Cherry Lane, I Said the Wrong Thing to the Right Girl. Some of those big radio hits that should have been radio hits that were not released as singles. So no, that's the next record. Cherry Lane and Wrong Thing, Right Girl was the 87 album.
Who brings in Because the Night? Bruce Springsteen, Patti Smith song. Is that Gene's idea? Is that your idea?
No, that was my idea. That's a great story behind that, because we had done Let's Spend the Night Together on the Right to Rock album, this cover of the Stones song. And it was kind of a tradition that we wanted to perpetuate and have a cover song on the new album as well. And what's it going to be? What's the cover song for this album? It becomes this every year. What's our cover going to be on this new album? And I just heard Because the Night driving over Mulholland Drive in the hills one night in my Trans Am, came on the radio, and it just hit me. Like, I heard my version in my head. It wasn't a song that I grew up loving or listening to or wanting to cover. I just thought, man, this is perfect. This song really lends itself well to the Keelization process. So I went home and I worked up a home demo for Because the Night in my home studio. And then we have our first meeting, Rod Keel and Gene Simmons coming together for the first production meeting for the Final Frontier sessions. And Gene's thinking the same thing I'm thinking. What's the cover song for this album going to be? And he says, I've got an idea. Check this out. and he puts in a cassette tape. I wish I had this tape now. It was Gene singing "The Beat Goes On" by Sonny and Cher. And literally, it's, and the beat goes on, and the beat goes on. It was Gene, because, Gene and Cher had a thing, right? And it was really a good idea, actually. It was, I mean, the beat goes on. It's a rock anthem, big, huge power drums. I could see it. It was not a stupid idea by any stretch of the word. I thought, well, that's cool, Gene. Check this out. So I played him my version of Because the Night. And he says, okay. That was it. Wow. Because the Night was the choice. It was the choice we had those two options. It could have been Keel doing The Beat Goes On by Sonny and Cher, or Keel doing Because the Night. Thank God it was Because the Night, because I can still do that song in my show to this day. The solo acoustic show, the Ron Keel band show, the Keel gigs. That song's a part of every show that I do. I don't know that I could say that if we had covered The Beat Goes On.
Well, there's your blabbermouth headline. Gene Simmons suggests Beat Goes On, but
we're not talking about Dave Ellefson today.
It's I don't even know what to. I mean, I'll talk about it if you want to talk about it.
No. I love that guy. He's a good friend of mine.
I'll tell you.
I don't even know why. I'm sorry I even brought that up.
I'll tell you.
Can you edit that out?
I had a convention booking thing that we were working on together when this controversy broke. And I was supposed to call him and go over the arrangements. And I'll be honest with you, I still haven't called because I just felt like he has his own things to deal with. And the booking is irrelevant right now. And so, I'm not sure that who knows?
I don't even know why I even brought that up. But you were talking about The Beat Goes On.
Oh, well.
I'm sorry, Dave. Dave, I love you, and I wish you all the best, you and your family. And he's a good friend and been a big help to me in my career. Obviously, as you know, EMP released "Fight Like a Band," the debut Ron Keel. Of course, I've got the visual aids still here. "Fight Like a Band" on David Ellefson's EMP label group. Highly recommended. I'm super proud of this record, and you can, of course, get your autograph copies at ronkeel.com.
You just segued The Beat Goes On into David Ellefson into a Ron Keel album. That was impressive. That's a triple play right there. Years later, people would hear 10,000 Maniacs play that song and go, I can't believe 10,000 Maniacs is covering Keel.
I know, really.
Probably had no idea. So, okay. So we're gonna move faster because I can tell that Ron Keel's got things to do.
I'm good. But when you do these interviews and you try and go in chronological order over a 40-year career, it's gonna. I don't want your audience to get bored. I just want to keep the wheels turning forward and promote all the cool new shit that I'm talking about. And make sure that we, because anybody who wants to know my story, really, Jason, can just go to ronkeel.com and buy the Kindle or Nook version from Barnes & Noble or Amazon of my autobiography, which we are re-releasing in January to coincide with my new album. Even Keel, Life on the Streets of Rock and Roll. We're doing a new edition with a lot of added stories, a little more dirt, and a little more on the years that didn't get covered in the original autobiography, and the audiobook version as well, which people are loving at patreon.com/Ron Keel, the only place you can listen to the audiobook version with some great voiceover work from people in my life and my career. Brian Slagle from Metal Blade, Mark Ferrari, Craig Gass does a great Gene Simmons impersonation in my audiobook. You got to hear it at patreon.com/Ron Keel for only $6.99.
Perfect. 1987. This record is just called Keel. Michael Wagner produces it. This is a great producer. What do you think about this record?
Well, this still sounds great to this day. And the cool thing about this one and Final Frontier is that they were just remastered and reissued by Rock Candy Records. And the new remastered editions sound absolutely amazing. You can hear the air passing by the drumstick on its way to the drum. I mean, the audio quality on these remasters is fantastic. Wagner, obviously a legend in our business, 100 million records sold. And this, just to have one of my albums be a part of his body of work is a huge honor and a thrill, and some great songs. I think this is the album where I finally learned to sing. After Late on the Sealer, Late on the Law, Right to Rock, Final Frontier, I'm 5 albums deep in my career. right? I finally learned how to sing on this record. And Michael was the first producer / engineer to capture my voice when I was able to put all those pieces together and control my tone and deliver the song the way it should have been. So yeah, this is a very special record for me and for a lot of the fans too as well. Was not our highest charting album, and there's obviously reasons for that. It's very tough to follow success like Right to Rock and Final Frontier. People would say, well, why would I buy this one? I've already got the other two. So it was really tough to sell it. There was only one single. MCA dropped the ball. Obviously, MCA dropped the ball on a lot of artists back in the 80s. We were just caught up in that crossfire. They spent a shit ton of money. I think they spent $5 million.
Somebody's Waiting is the only single off this record.
It's the only single. There was no follow-up single, no second shot. And back then you had to have 2 or 3, videos and singles to get an album to break. And MCA was just gun shy. They just held up their hands. I don't know what we were on tour with Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
I mean, we're selling out Madison Square Garden 3 nights in a row touring with Bon Jovi, and they didn't know what to do with us. Obviously, we're doing something right because it's a great record. We had a great tour, but that I had no idea at that time that the writing was already on the wall.
Right. Now, you tour a lot for that album. Like you said, Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet tour, it doesn't get much bigger than that. And so a year goes by. This is the first time you guys take off a year. You go from 87 to 89. This is larger than live. And this is half of a live album, half original songs, right?
Well, they're all original songs.
Excuse me, half
live, half studio, which I thought was cool. ZZ Top did that. Was it Fandango? I think, where they had a half live, half studio record. I always thought, how cool is that? To be able to do that, to showcase the live side of Keel, and also to include some great new studio recordings at the same time.
Yeah. Now, okay, Ron. So here's my question about this, and so I interview tons of people who had records out at this time also. And I feel like, so Keel calls it a day in 89. And I'm going to ask you why in a second, but it seems like what happens in 1990 and 1991, and even a little bit into 92, a lot of these bands break. You got your Warrants and your Skid Rows, and a lot of these bands.
XYZ, Firehouse, a lot of bands had success in 90, 91, 92. Yeah, it was still alive and well. For me, it was different because, as you're asking about the breakup of Keel, it was just time. I mean, I was the only original member left, and I felt like in order to succeed, I had to do something brave, bold, and different. So I put together a band called Fair Game with all female backing musicians. And we continued on in the same vein as Keel. In fact, we played a lot of the Keel hits, Rock and Roll Animal and Right to Rock. And those songs were staples as part of the Fair Game show for 3 years, pounding it out in LA and Hollywood with an all-female lineup. It just like very, very much like Vixen with a male frontman. If I had to draw a comparison to it, and that's what I patterned it after because I'd worked with Vixen in 89 on Rev It Up. Joan Jett played on Final Frontier. Lita Ford's always been a good friend of mine. And I've always admired and enjoyed female rockers. And I thought, what am I going to do after Keel? I can't just put 4 more long-haired guys behind me and call it Keel. I've got to do something different, something that's never been done before. Other than the Robert Palmer video of Addicted to Love, nobody had done that. So I gave it a shot. What now?
Why did Keel end? What happened?
It was a business move. It was obviously, we're not able to. We got dropped from every label. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting there in Santa Monica with a beach house, sports cars, wife and kids and mortgage, and no record deal, and no dates, no tours, no shows. What are you going to do, man? I mean, yeah, I got to do something. I got to try and figure out how to, the first time I would reinvent myself, as I've done many times in the 30 years since. You've got to reinvent yourself, find another horse to ride, because this horse is dead. We're going to have to move on. And as my name is Keel and everybody else quit, I could have continued on with a band called Keel. It just never would have been, to me, morally correct or appropriate, because Mark Ferrari, Brian J., Dwayne Miller, and I are brothers, and we're family to this day. We are still brothers. We're still family. I did not want to just recreate Keel with a bunch of new guys. I wanted to do something special, something different, something that had never been done before, something that could make history. It's not enough just to make music or make records or make gigs. You got to make history, man. You got to do something special while you're here on this planet, because we're only here for a little while.
Were you disappointed, Ron, at that time when the other bands were coming out and getting all the success, thinking maybe we should have kept it together, or maybe it would have been another chance?
No, to put it bluntly, no. I didn't see a whole. All I was seeing and hearing at the time was Nirvana and Pearl Jam and bands like that were coming out, and it was. I know the bands that we mentioned. At Skid Row, Firehouse, XYZ, some of the bands from the late '80s, early '90s. Having some success. So a lot of that was, hey, these guys are doing it. I can still do it too. This music is still viable. This music is still selling millions of albums each year with great, hard, melodic rock. And that's the game I was in. I was still playing that same game. I wasn't disappointed that they were having success. I just thought, well, yeah, it's a good sign. When all those bands stopped selling records, and all of a sudden, we were all the laughing stock of the music industry. Then, yeah, I got a little disappointed, and I started singing country music.
Yeah, and so, and there you took maybe the smartest step you could have taken. I know that years later, VH1 does one of these, Where Are They Now bits, and they talk about you having a country career. And I know a lot of the Kiss fans and the Keel fans were sort of surprised. But you're a Southern guy, and this wasn't you weren't doing country music as a gimmick or a get rich quick. You were passionate about the music you were making.
Yeah, it was really therapy for me, because at the core of my being, I have to create, and I have to entertain, and I have to write. I don't have to be metal. I don't have to have hair. I don't have to be bald. I don't have to be fat, short, ugly, whatever. But I've got to entertain people. I've got to write songs, man. And when you take away the beach house and the sports cars and all the fancy endorsements and the guitars and the wall of Marshalls and the smoke and the lights and everything's gone, you sit here with an acoustic guitar and you write a song about real life, and it makes you feel good. It makes you feel alive to just write and play and sing with a bottle of whiskey around a campfire. And it sounded like country music. That's what it sounded like. And a lot of stuff from the 80s does sound like country music.
Yes.
Every rose has its thorn. Tom Kiefer was doing country music long before I was, man. That Heartbreak Station, it took the last train out of my heart. And those are country songs. Even though he's singing really high, they're country songs. And that's what my stuff sounded like at the time. And I saw it as a new challenge and a new opportunity to entertain people and express myself in a way that I had never done. It's a very difficult, competitive business, just like the Hollywood scene in the 80s. You do not just put on a hat and go in front of a country audience and pretend. They'll eat you alive. They'll throw shit at you. You'll get the shit kicked out of you. You have got to be real, or the country audience, especially in the 90s, will not tolerate that for a minute. So it has to come from the heart. It's got to be real. You've got to feel those songs. You've got to keep them drinking, keep them dancing, and make them feel something. And a lot of the common elements that we had in the 80s, big drums, juicy, beefy guitars, songs about chasing women and drinking beer. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of common ground there. So I found that common ground and staked out my claim, found a place that I could call home, and wrote some great music and had a lot of success in the 90s with TV and films, and touring the world as a country singer with a couple of great album releases. But in the end, it was, again, too restrictive for me, because I don't want to be told what I can and can't do, or what I can and can't say, or what I can and can't wear. Country music was very rigid. It's just like metal. You have to look a certain way, and you have to sing about sex and drugs and partying all night and how many chicks you can screw. This is what we were doing in the 80s. And country music in the 90s, it was the same kind of thing. You can't say ass on the radio, right? I wrote a song with "Bust My Ass" I wrote, in the lyric, and I got totally slammed for, of course, now you can say that. The restrictions that country music put on me in the 90s were just as uncomfortable as the restrictions that metal put on me. So when I started my next songwriting phase in 1998, 99, I was living in Italy and doing a house gig in Sigonella, Sicily. I lived there for a year in an environment where there was no musical prejudice. The audience was predominantly Italians, but a lot of American servicemen and servicewomen as well that would come to these shows. And many of them didn't even speak English. Mm-hmm. And they didn't care if I was playing Garth Brooks or Led Zeppelin. They just wanted to hear good voices and good music. And that was the most unbiased, unprejudiced environment that I've ever performed in. I was the house band there for 6 months. And during that point, I started writing songs and created kind of a hybrid. It was, country songs with screaming guitars and, energetic vocals and thunderous drums. It came out sounding like what I do now, which is basically cowboy metal.
Yeah. Well, the tattoos say it. Ron, you've always sort of been ahead. I'm not sure when sees it. Even going to country now, every rock guy's country. When you were doing it, it was surprising to a lot of people. I remember, and then as they got to hear that you mixed the metal cowboy music together, that you were able to do it. And we were talking about technology. You were doing here in Vegas, you had your own open mic night that was streaming. Nobody was streaming at that time. The fact that you could see this whole performance, you were working hard, and connections were difficult, technology was difficult, but you were always trying to keep it one step up and keep your music in the ears of people, and especially people who wanted it, people who were your fans. You always sort of gave back as much as you could. And that's why things like Keel Fest existed, where people could spend a couple of days hearing all the music from your career. And again, if someone's a fan of your music, what a great treat it is to be able to get all this. And if you're not a fan, this is a great way to be exposed to it, because you haven't stopped. And that's a great thing. Some people put things in the past. You're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Steeler, as well as doing new music. And I think that that's a real testament to who you are, Ron.
I appreciate that, and that's just really, it's just who I am and what I do. I've got to keep moving forward. I don't live in the past. I believe if you live in the past, you'll die in the past. I treasure it. I treasure that 40th anniversary of Steeler and all those memories and all the accomplishments and seeing the world and all the great friendships and just all my dreams come true. But I can't rest on that. I've got to live for today and work for tomorrow. That's just who I am. I'm a shark. I got to keep swimming or I'll drown. So I appreciate the compliment, Jason, but really I'm just staying true to my nature and being who I am. I realized a long time ago that if you sell 3 million records, that billions of people don't like you or don't want what you do. And I'm cool with that too, man. I do this all for totally self-indulgent personal reasons. I need to satisfy Ron Keel. And at the end of the day, I hate that phrase, by the way, at the end of the day, some people are going to like it, love it, hate it, whatever their reaction is. It's out of my control. All I can do is create and entertain and let the chips fall where they may.
To thine own self be true, Ron. You do it. If other people enjoy it, that's great, but you're doing it because you believe in it. You left Las Vegas. This is going back now. What year was it? 14?
Yes, I left Las Vegas in the winter of 2014. Christmas Day, 2014 was my first day I ever set foot in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, my new beloved adopted hometown. And I'd never even been here before that day. And
amazing.
Renee and I put down roots here in Sioux Falls, and I still love it. Of course, I love coming back to Vegas. I was there for Christmas. Did a new music video with Paul Shortino, which is coming out very soon. And I miss you and all my friends back in Sin City. But the airport's right down the road. Anytime you need me back in Vegas, Jason, I'll be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you've made it home there. For a while. You were doing the Badlands Pawn, business that was starting there, but you have the house band and you have the radio show. You were made a really strong offer that you couldn't refuse. Yet you had a great chance to go out there and do a lot of things. Yeah,
it was a huge opportunity when the founder of Badlands Pawn, which was a very ambitious effort. Yeah. 70,000 square foot concert facility, radio station, entertainment stop, tourist stop here in Sioux Falls. And I was the voice and the face of that entire franchise. And it was a huge challenge and a great opportunity, which I'm very thankful for. I believe that everything happens the way it's supposed to. And the fact that we're here in South Dakota has a couple of reverberating repercussions in the wake of that move. Two things happened that I'm really thankful for. One was the medical care that Renee received from the doctors here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. If you're going to get breast cancer, this is the best zip code on the planet to be in.
No, he doesn't recommend. We don't recommend that you get breast cancer.
But God, the Great Spirit, the higher power, whatever you want to call that, according to your beliefs, put us here, we believe, to save her life. She believes if we were still in Vegas, she'd be dead. Because we've got friends in Vegas with the medical care and the system, and it's a huge town, obviously, Jason. I'm preaching to the choir. We have friends that are waiting 4 weeks for test results. They get a biopsy, and they still don't get their test results for weeks later. Renee got her test results literally within hours. And within 3 weeks of diagnosis, she was already in chemo. The medical care and attention that she received being in Sioux Falls, because her tumor grew, I think, twice its size within 2 weeks. It was a really aggressive tumor. And she credits our move to Sioux Falls with her survival, or vice versa, credits her survival due to our move. Plus, dude, last year when everybody else shut down, when Vegas shut down, and everybody else shut down, we never shut down. I did gigs. I was able to, I've been to the gym every other day since the pandemic started without a mask on. My gym never shut down and I never had to wear a mask. Although this does give me a perfect opportunity to plug. I got to plug the Metal Cowboy. These are all hermetically sealed in their own container. There's all their own plastic container. These things are fantastic. I'm a big mask guy, so don't think that I'm an anti-masker, because these things have a ton of great uses. When you're at the airport or at a bar or anywhere at a urinal and you're wearing a mask, it takes that smell of, you've stood at a urinal, right? Done your business. This really comes in handy for that. If you're drinking and you don't want people to smell it on your breath, put on the Metal Cowboy mask. And the artwork is great on these. I got to show off the artwork. These are available at, of course, RonKeel.com. Nice. So I'm not an anti-masker. I make about $300 a day from mask sales, so I'm all about the masks. It's all good.
And I think, Ron, I think the point you were making also about the masks is that in your area in South Dakota, there was not this outbreak. You weren't not wearing a mask in a protest. You didn't need a mask. You were in an area with people who were safe, I believe is what you're saying.
Well, no, I think we had a spike. We had a couple of spikes. I mean, the COVID has not bypassed any state or nation, but South Dakota was one of the few places where we were still able to have some sense of normalcy. Obviously, the live music indoors was shut down, but we had some outdoor gigs. We did 5 headline shows at Sturgis last year, the Sturgis Rally, 5 headline shows. We did the Sioux Empire Fair. We did a couple of other big outdoor gigs here in South Dakota last summer. Like I said, I've been able to go to the gym every other day since the pandemic started. I'm not going to get into the preaching about the vaccine or the mask. I love the mask because,
what about a Ron Keel vaccine holder? You go to the pharmacist and they give you your vaccine in a Ron Keel hold. No,
I got my vaccine right here.
If Keel this doesn't work, what about Ron Keel tombstones. That might be next. If
Well,
none of these
I'm
work,
sure there's going to be one of those someday, but no, I'm not.
hopefully not for a long time.
No tombstone for me. Just cremate me and scatter my ashes somewhere. But
Ron, before we scatter your ashes, we got to talk about the upcoming tour because you're about to hit the road, and which is amazing and great that you're able to do it. The Ron Keel Band, playing all music from your career. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up.
Well, the shows never stopped for me, as I just mentioned. We did 25 gigs last year, lots more where that came from this year. I've already been to 5 states so far in 2021. I started in Montana, Wyoming in January. I've done Ohio already, Indiana, South Dakota, and there's one more that I'm missing. I know I've been to 5 states already this year. We've got a lot more where that came from. We're just going to keep playing shows whenever and wherever we can, and some big ones, which is really cool because with the format that we present with the Ron Keel Band, we're opening for Jack Russell's Great White, and we're opening for Dwight Yoakam. I mean, we can get out there at big outdoor festival events at some of these gigs, and I've always done this, Jason, tailor the show for the audience. And it's not like it's just because I've got a diverse catalog of music to choose from. When we used to play with Metallica, we'd whip out Speed Demon, Leather Jackets, and Speed Demon, all the hard and heavy shit. When we're playing with Bon Jovi, we'd play the more commercial, radio-friendly, teenage girl music. I mean, but they're all part of my catalog and part of my history. So we're able to do. I can play at your wedding. I can play your bike event. It's given me the opportunity to stay active and stay busy and get the band out there. So unfortunately, it's not the same show every night. It would be nice if it was, but it's all the guys in my band their heads are spinning because every day it's a different song list, tailor-made for this event or this particular festival, or like the Jack Russell date, June 12th in Kansas City, Missouri. Jack and I back on stage on the same bill together after all these years. I had Jack on my radio show recently to talk about this. We're really excited about the gig, but that's a kind of a 500 people at a small club that are going to want to hear the extra Keel shit. They're going to want to hear all those Keel songs from my history. Whereas at the big bike event, at the Full Throttle in Sturgis, they're going to want to hear some more of that Southern rock or some different flavors they might not care about because the night that doesn't go over so well at a big outdoor bike event. Because the night, if I've got 20,000 people out there and 1,000 of them know who I am, those 19,000 people don't want to hear Because the Night. So we've got to kind of tailor the show to suit that audience. And Because the Night usually is in the show all the time because it's one of my signature songs. But the gigs are hopefully there'll be more where that came from. I hate not being able to go to LA or Vegas or Phoenix or New York or even Florida or Texas are still very difficult to put together a run, 2 or 3 or 4 dates in each market. So we're predominantly in the Midwest. Sturgis is our residency at the Full Throttle Saloon in August, where people from all over the country and all over the world can come see the Ron Keel Band at the Full Throttle for the Sturgis Rally in August. And all those dates, of course, are at ronkeel.com. We're going to keep updating the website as we go and try and get out there and play as many shows as we can.
Yeah, I think it's great, Ron. You're staying busy, you're staying active. I think for some people, this has been this really downtime. For myself, I've stayed really busy. I tell people I'm going to miss this pandemic because I've really gotten more done in this time than I have before, catching up on things. It's also great to catch up with old friends like you, Ron, because we finally have a little bit of time. I mean, you're busy there in the Keel Empire, but it's nice to catch up, and also for new people to be turned on to music, because I know you feel that you've told these stories a million times, and you probably have, but there's always someone new who watches one interview, and I know you're doing radio, so you see it too, and then they watch another one and they say, you know what, I'm not really a fan of that music, or I didn't even know it, but boy, I sort of enjoyed a fresh conversation on music.
Exactly.
It's a universal language, and music will always be bigger than politics and all these other things that happen. This is the one thing we can all agree on.
That's right, man. I appreciate the opportunity. And yes, we've always got to keep winning over new fans. And so many of the people in our audiences are in their 20s. They've got their fist in the air singing the Right to Rock, and they weren't even alive when that song was a hit for us in '85. So I appreciate the opportunity to reconnect with you and some of our longtime Keelaholics, and hopefully win over a few new ones as well. Thank you for the opportunity, Jason.
Thank you, Ron. We're going to link all 10,000 things that you mentioned in the description, or they just have to go there. They just have to go to ronkeel.com. It's your one-stop shop for all things Keel, and I thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person again, Ron.
Let's do it soon, Jason. Thank you for the chance, and thank you for everybody that's put up with the hour and 24 minutes of me doing this. I didn't even get to the puppet show, man. I was going to do a puppet show, but maybe next time.
I was going to put a bell in every time you said the word Keel, but there would be no other audio. Take care.
Dong.